Got it. Yep. Okay. All right. Oh, one watching now. Okay, good. Oh. These laws are unlawful because they constitute a form of. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience. This is kind of a first. We have there's one of our applicants is unable to use Zoom, so we're doing a live YouTube stream of this orientation session, as well as it being on Zoom, and as well as us talking face to face. So lots of things are going on at the same time. Welcome. Let's see. Do I have sound on Zoom? It looks like I do. People on Zoom, can you hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you. Okay, nice to meet you all. Do you mind if I just get your names? I've looked over your applications, especially the theory ones, but I'd be curious to know your names. Can we start over here? I'm Sarah. Sarah Thomas, nice to meet you. Yes, we'll wait on you later. Correct? Excellent. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Yes, nice to meet you. Daniel. Excellent.
Corinne Peter.
Oh, yes, excellent.
Summer Lee.
We will be talking later as well. Okay, yes. Spencer Stevens. Spencer Stevens. Musicology? Yes. Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear musicology applicants here as well. Okay, let's see. So let me pull up my PowerPoint. What I'd like to do now, and I'll share my screen as well, is just give a sense of who we are as a school, to give you an idea of who we are and what we do, and also to give you an idea of what you can expect if you are here. And, I imagine that a lot of you are interviewing at other schools. And so, this is an opportunity for you to, really learn more about the program here in order to make an informed choice. My name is David Heetderks. I am an associate professor of music theory here. And I'm also the chair of the Music History Theory and Ethnomusicology Division. So let me just start up my PowerPoint and share screen. Okay. Right. All right. Is that legible to everyone? Good. Okay. Thank you. So first, just scheduling issues. There you go. So here's the schedule for the entire day. The chair orientation is right now. At 10 o'clock, there will be a theory mock seminar. So if you're one of the theory applicants, and you can just stay in this room. And if you're interested in participating, you're welcome to stick around and listen as well. There will be a musicology mock seminar with Drs. Brian Wright and Beth Snyder in room 250. That'll be downstairs at the same time. At 11 o'clock, there will be a library tour, and we'll get a group to walk you over to the library. Sorry. At 12 noon, at 12 noon, you can get lunch. So the lunch, we'll find some people to direct you there. It's going to be in the green room on the second floor. And you may eat in here. 1 o'clock TATF orientation. And then from 2 to 5, you can either stay here or have your meetings with individual faculty members. Just so you know, we have reserved this room right here. This is room 321 the entire day. And so if you are like in between meetings, or if you just need a place to like sit and read or check your email or whatever, you may feel free to come back here at any time. Okay. From 2 to 5, some professors will be here just as for like an informal hangout. I've also informed the current graduate students that you'll be here, and they might, swing by and say hello and introduce themselves. If you want to like read or sit in the corner and do your own thing too, that's absolutely fine. So feel free to use this room as a home base for the day. That said, if you want to like walk around and listen and see the campus, that's also fine, of course. People on Zoom, would you mind muting your microphone? I'm getting some audio from someone there. Okay. At 5 o'clock, some of the current graduate students will meet you here. And if you have the time and if you would like to, they're taking a group to have dinner. I think I said greenhouse on the schedule that we sent to you, but it turns out that they're full, but you're going to go to El Matador instead. That'll be covered, so you will not have to pay for that. And that'll give you an opportunity to speak with graduate students, maybe where professors are not present, because I know that's important. So they'll have a chance to do that. So again, meet here at 5 o'clock. They have vegetarian options if any of you are vegetarian. All right. So let me give you a sense of who we are. There are about 127 full-time faculty in the College of Music. There are 21 full-time faculty in this division of history, theory, and ethnomusicology. So this is a big school. No two ways about it. There are about between 15 and 1,600 students here per year. About a third of them are graduate students, and that's graduate students both in this division and then also graduate students in performance. Okay. Oh, let me back up for 1 second. Please, I know some of you got here early. Please help yourself to coffee and refreshments. They'll be here. There's a Keurig machine. I hope you'll know how to use a Keurig, right? So please help yourself to coffee. That's what I would have wanted if it was 9 o'clock in the morning. All right, just don't be shy. Come on up. Okay. Let's back up. There are 56 students currently enrolled in the MHTE program. So that's people who are currently taking classes, people who are finishing their dissertation. Everyone. So 9 of them are master's students, 27 are doctoral students, and then 20 of them are undergraduates in our new program that launched last year called the BA in Critical Studies in Music and Society. Okay, so that's sort of the breakdown of this division. Yeah, so again, this is a big school, and this is a big department in a big school. Okay, and our faculty are correspondingly numerous and diverse. Okay, so these are the continuing MHTE faculty. There are 19 pictures here. We also have 2 visiting assistant professor positions, so that totals 21. And this is just like a sampling of some of the research specialties we have. You can read some of these in your own time. There are quite a few specialties. Historically, UNT was known for its expertise in early music. That has to do, I think, with Helen Hewitt, one of the previous chairs, and some of our early music collections here. So that has historically been, something that UNT had a reputation for. We also had a reputation for the history of music theory and voice leading production. But I'd say that is not the case now. I think, we have so many faculty that, we're developing expertise in several different areas. And one of the advantages here is that, you'll get an introduction to a lot of different modes of analysis, or a lot of different, methods. And, you'll find a lot of different people who are able to work with you depending on what your research goals are. I guess some of our new areas that we're growing in most recently are certainly popular music studies. So I was brought on back in 2018 to help bolster that. And Dr. Brian Wright, who's here on the bottom right, he was brought on a year later. And so we're kind of increasing our research profile in popular music studies. We also have 2 professors in the jazz and composition departments of commercial music as well. So that's kind of interesting. So there's some, sometimes some interaction and synergy between those divisions. We're also very interested in pedagogy, both as a way of both the mentoring of the pedagogy of our students and even like pedagogy as a research area, And so Dr. Ben Graff, who's one of our lecturers in music theory, actually has a podcast where he interviews different music theory teachers. If you haven't checked it out, it's quite a bit of fun. Okay. Just again, give you a sense of the diversity of topics that we teach here. These are seminar topics from this year. So, it spans quite a broad range: 17th century opera, musical instruments in American culture, improvisation, phenomenological approaches to ethnomusicology, and so forth. Okay.
How do you think this problem has come about, and what do you want?
And one moment, please. Yeah. I'm going to ask someone to mute their microphone. Okay. Here are some recent PhD dissertations. Okay. So some of these dissertations were in theory and musicology. And again, I think you'll see a broad range of time periods and topics being covered. So some 17th or some 18th century, excuse me, some 19th century, some 20th.
With this topic, the very latest, I spoke to the BBC's Anne Soy, who was in Nairobi, and she spent much of her day down at the sea for the past.
If I do this. All right. Testing 1, 2. Yeah, we still have sound. Okay. I think one advantage of our program, and something that we're very concerned about offering, is mentorshiping or teaching. And so when I was a oral skills teacher, eons ago, at the Yale School of Music, someone said, "Hey, you'd be a good oral skills instructor." I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And we had one meeting with the professor who was in charge of the theory and oral skills. They talked about what to do. And then they said, "Okay, go teach your class." And that was pretty much it. There was one more meeting, to be fair. There was one more meeting later on in the semester. So back then, the student instructors were pretty much left on their own. That is not what we do here. We really take care to give a lot of feedback and mentorship to the instructors here. So here are the lecturers who are primarily responsible for mentoring the teachers. Dr. April Prince in musicology, she makes those assignments and kind of oversees them. Dr. Ben Graff oversees the oral skills teaching fellows, and then Jillian Robertson oversees the teaching assistants who help with the online courses. Okay, and you'll get more information at the TATF orientation, which is at 1 o'clock this afternoon. But to talk about some of the mentorship and feedback that they give. And I found that our graduates tend to have a lot of teaching skill and teaching experience, which can make them attractive candidates. Let's see, and the types of teaching assistantships we have, teaching assistantships and teaching fellowships we have include teaching oral skills, assisting in theory classes, assisting in musicology classes, and then also assisting in some ethnomusicology classes. So there are opportunities across all three areas within our division. Okay. Another thing we have that I think if you come here, you should take advantage of is our lecture series. So we invite typically 3 guest lecturers each year, so one from each of our areas, typically, history, theory, and ethnomusicology. On the right here, you'll see the lecturers we had from last year. On the left is some of the events that are going on this year. So this past November, we had we collaborated with the departments of jazz studies and composition to have a symposium on the legacy and work of Nadia Boulanger. And so Kim Francis from the University of Guelph was a musicologist. She gave a lecture. We also had a pianist and composer coming. Later this semester, we'll be having Dr. Mitchell O'Reiner from the University of Denver. He's a hip hop scholar, a very good scholar. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say. So those are the sorts of things that we have here. And again, this is a very good opportunity for you to kind of learn about some cutting edge research and network, and meet, active scholars in the field. So certainly take advantage of that. And then we also have graduate student organizations. GAMET is a graduate association of musicologists and theorists. That being said, just don't let the title fool you. Ethnomusicologists can also join GAMET, and many do. So, it's really for any student in this division. They typically have monthly meetings where they might do, guest speakers. They'll do professional development workshops. They'll have CV reviews or kind of share conference proposals to get feedback and so forth. This is Bernardo Ilari, our area coordinator for musicology. So GAMET has been a really good resource for our students here. Also, with such a big school, it helps to have the smaller organizations, just so you can have people to talk to and people to give you advice on how to navigate some of the big systems here. GAMET also organizes a yearly conference, which is happening tomorrow. And so if you are going to be in this area tomorrow, I would certainly recommend that you attend the conference. It's going to be in the Senate Room and the University Union building, which is in that direction. So it's about 10 minutes walk from here. And if you need directions, just ask one of our many friendly students and we'll direct you there. That is from 9:30 to 5 o'clock tomorrow. Dr. Stephen Pennington will be the keynote speaker. The Student Society for Ethnomusicology, it's a newer organization, but that is for ethnomusicology students. They organize research sharing sessions. They were trying to organize a film screening, and they also organize a Hear the World concert. So they do quite a bit as well. Let's see, another advantage, and this is particularly true this year, is Denton is actually pretty centrally located. And so many of the regional societies often are within driving distance or pretty close distance of this area. And so actually this year, the Texas Society for Music Theory is in Arlington, which is about like an hour south of here. And so students are going to carpool there. As it happens, the AMS Southeast, and the Southern Plains Society for Ethnomusicology are also pretty close this year. And so a lot of students will be attending. And again, if you come here, certainly we would encourage you to attend these regional conferences to, again, just learn about some of the cutting edge research and network with other scholars. We also, certainly our students also have presented at the national societies, AMS, SEM, and SMT. And they're also presented at some other, I think they're students presenting at YASPM and Society for American Music this year. And so our students do present at regional and national conferences. And we set aside money in our operating budget to help to allay some of the travel costs associated with presenting at conferences. Okay, we have ensemble opportunities. So if you want to study, applied lessons or participate in an ensemble, that's certainly a possibility. These are just some examples. We have classical ensembles too, orchestras and so forth, just to be clear. There are two ensembles that are here in bold. That's the Chinese Music Ensemble and the Mariachi Aguilas. Those two ensembles are actually housed in this division. So they're taught right now by doctoral ethnomusicology students. So this is the Chinese ensemble, and this is the mariachi ensemble. I cannot find my notes right now, but I wrote down some of the places that these ensembles perform. I'll see if I can do it from memory. So the Chinese ensemble, they performed most recently in Plano. There's at the Chinese New Year Festival. They're trying to see if they can perform at the Regional Society for Ethnomusicology Conference. And they're also performed, here on campus. If you do come, I would highly recommend to hear one of these ensembles, whether you're theory, history, or ethnomusicology. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Mariachi has performed at several different locations, so they've done very well. We host a Hear the World conference concert in Dallas, where we often have they'll have a presentation on instruments from around the world, and also they'll give a brief performance as well. So that's another thing that the ethnomusicology division or area, puts together. Okay, and we offer about 1,000 concerts a year, so there's plenty of opportunities to hear live music if you come here. Again, one advantage of being at the big school. Okay, let's talk about your course of study, just to make sure that you can understand what you can expect if you come here. So first things first, if you're accepted, the first thing that will happen is that you will be assigned a faculty mentor. And that is someone who you'll meet with to discuss your research goals. And they will also talk with you about, what courses to take and what courses will be most appropriate to those goals. In the history and ethnomusicology, the faculty mentor will be someone assigned to you. In theory, it's the faculty mentor will always be Jillian Robinson, our theory area coordinator. With your faculty mentor, you'll fill out a degree plan where you'll kind of, just plan out which courses you want to take and make sure that they'll fulfill the requirements for your degree. That is typically, well, if you're a master's student, that has to be completed your second semester. If you're a doctoral student, it has to be completed basically before you take your qualifying exams. If you are a PhD student, one thing that you'll have to do is a related field. And that is, some other field that overlaps with your research interests. And you'll have to take a certain number of courses in your related field. The related field can be one of the other areas in this division. So for example, if you're a musicology student, your related field could be ethnomusicology or music theory, something like that. And the requirements for the related field are outlined in our course catalog pretty explicitly. But it does not have to be in this division. You can take a related field, somewhere else in the college, like some of our students have done piano pedagogy, piano performance, just music pedagogy. Those are all possibilities. And it can even be outside of this college. So you could do, history, linguistics, philosophy, whatever you want. Okay. If you come, you certainly will want to think about what related field would be most appropriate to your research. If you don't know, that's okay. You apply, of course. All right. And as you, by the time you get to your last semester, you will want to select a major professor and put together your advisory committee. So the major professor is going to be the primary professor who works with you on your PhD dissertation proposal, and then will be the primary person that you meet with to write your dissertation. Your advisory committee will also give you feedback on your dissertation, and they'll participate in your defense. The advisory committee is going to be one professor from your related field, and then at least one more professor, usually from your own area. Okay. And then more are possible if you want to be ambitious, go for it. For PhD students, you'll have to pass qualifying exams and a language exams. I won't go into detail just because the requirements are a little bit different for each area. So it would be tedious to go over all of those in detail. But if you come here, just read through the course catalog and make sure you're familiar with these requirements. The qualifying exams are basically a way of making sure that you are kind of just well versed in the major areas of the discipline and also ready to complete your dissertation. The language exams are where you just have to demonstrate proficiency in languages that are useful for your academic research. The one thing I would say about language exams is do not wait until the last minute. So figure out a way to pass them or figure out a way to start studying for them soon. Some of our lecturers have done like language reading groups to help you with German, because German is a language that a lot of people select. But again, the language requirements are different. Some of our, at least our theory students, do other languages. Finally, you will write your thesis or dissertation, and that is the last step. And you'll defend it and pass with flying colors, and have a UNT degree, and wear it proudly. If you are a theory student, the theory requirements for the MA program, this is the master's program, are a little different. For the theory MA program, if you want to write a thesis, excuse me, if you want to write a master's thesis, you may, and you can find professors who would like to work with you on a thesis. You can also just complete a coursework requirement for the master's degree and submit a portfolio, and take an oral exam on your portfolio instead. And I know there are some theory students here, so if you have more questions, feel free to ask me now or later. Okay, any questions about this kind of what you can expect if you come here? No? Okay. In life after graduation, it does exist. Here are some of our alumni placements from the past 10 years. So our alumni have found positions as assistant professors. They've found positions as lecturers. Some of them have gone on to study library science, and they become librarians, but they certainly use their use kind of what they've learned here in that role. And so they found all sorts of positions. As you can see from the map, a lot of the positions tend to be within this region, and I think that has to do with the fact that we're in southern Texas, and so we're most well known in this particular region. That said, we're not restricted to Texas. We've had students find positions all around the country. Okay. Finally, let's talk about funding. Okay. So there are a couple ways, a couple things that we do to fund our students. And the first is either a teaching assistant or a teaching fellow. Okay. Teaching assistant versus teaching fellow. A teaching fellow is basically the instructor of record for a course. That means like the teaching fellow is the one who's primarily responsible for the content of the course. And so the teaching fellow, sorry, let me get rid of you. The teaching fellow, they teach the oral skills courses, and then sometimes we'll also have teaching fellows teach some of the undergraduate lecture courses when the need arises. A teaching assistant is not the instructor of record. Instead, they assist whoever the instructor of record is. And so the assistants can take a lot of forms. It can take, it can be grading. It can be kind of helping with, preparing lectures and so forth. And then we also have a teaching assistant for our online theory classes, and they help to basically kind of create and test the Canvas sites for the course and do some grading and so forth. And that's valuable as well, just because it gives you experience in that other mode of teaching, which is becoming, increasingly common right now. These are typically half-time appointments, which means 20 hours per week. And it's a 9-month salary. This is what the salary was as of this academic year. The salaries are based on 3 levels, level 1, 2, or 3. The levels depend on basically how many credits you've earned here. So you start at level 1. After you earn credit, you're level 2. And if you're ABD, you're level 3. Okay. And so those are the salaries per month for the 9-month salary. These teaching fellowship positions also carry what's called TBP, or tuition benefit. And you'll get a minimum of 3 credits if you're an MA and 6 credits if you're a PhD student. And so a TBP basically means that, you don't have to pay tuition for those number of credits. And so we get at least 3, and we try to give you as many as possible, just to make this degree as easy for you to get as possible. So the TBB covers tuition, differential tuition, and mandatory fees. Those are the primary fees associated with each of those tuition credits. Your teaching assistantship will also allow you to enroll as a Texas resident, which is good. That makes it cheaper. And these are typically offered for 2-year or 3-year time frames, but very often these are extended. So very often, if you're still writing your dissertation, you'll have an opportunity to extend it, so you can continue to work on your dissertation. You can also earn a position as a grader. This carries an hourly wage of $15, and if you're already a TA or TF, you can add up to 5 additional grading hours to have up to 25 hours a week total. And graders, they do what it sounds like. They help grade for some particular class. Okay. We also offer scholarships. Okay. So there are 2 different types of scholarships. One group of scholarships are sort of so-called named scholarships. If you walk by the dean's office, you might see like a list of our named scholarships that we offer. Those are scholarships that this college, the College of Music, offers. And then there's also scholarships that are offered by the Toulouse Graduate School, which is like the larger school that oversees all the graduate programs here at the entire University of North Texas. Okay, so we offer, the College of Music offers, $1,000 to $2,000 scholarships, and those are renewable for up to 2 years. If you get a scholarship, you're also eligible for Texas residency tuition, but typically you'll also be a TA or TF, so that doesn't matter. University scholarships that you can also apply for are the Academic Achievement Scholarship and the RB Toulouse Scholarship. Each of those is $1,000, renewable for either 1 or 1 to 3 years, depending on which program you are in. So if you are accepted to UNT, in your acceptance letter, I'll say, please apply for these University Toulouse Graduate School scholarships, and I'll send you the link. Fortunately, it's a very simple process. There's not very much to upload. Just go ahead and do that. And we've had a pretty good track record of our students getting these scholarships to help fund their education. Okay, here is a website that if you want more information, you can look at. It's estimatemytuition@unt.edu. So you can kind of look at the approximate cost. The one thing to remember is that if you get a TA or TF position, you'll receive some amount of TBP, or tuition benefit program. And so remember to knock off or take off the tuition, differential tuition, and mandatory fees that are associated with however many hours of TBP that you get. So you have to do a little bit of math and working out, but you know, it can be done. Okay. You should receive an admission notice from this department by the end of February. And then we will look for, then you can look for funding decisions in March. So for the admissions decision, look for a message and accepted and a follow-up email from one of our area coordinators. So Bernardo Hillary is our area coordinator for musicology. And then I will follow up later with information about funding. Okay. And I know that, you know, you have a lot of decisions to make, and so we will try to get you this information as quickly as possible. All right. And yeah, this is about a 30-minute presentation. That's about what I estimated. So are there any questions about the program or any other thing that we that I presented on? And I'll turn on the I'll make sure the chat is visible as well. Okay. Yes.
So I have a question. If you are accepted, are you assigned a professor who you will work with? Or do you have a choice in that?
Oh, well, yeah, if you're accepted and if you're going to write back and indicate your intent to attend the university, typically what we've done before is the area coordinator will assign a professor based on your research interests. But if there's a particular professor that you're interested in working with, you may certainly kind of write back and request that person. And yeah, and Bernardo can give you information.
And the mentor is not your major professor. The mentor is meant to guide you through paperwork and the initial stages of your stay here. Little bit choose classes, keep up to speed with requirements and so on.
Okay. So then
The
the
major
major professor or the mentor would be different, and you would choose.
could be.
They could be, so yeah, your faculty mentor is the person who basically helps with registration and to plan your course schedule. And then the major professor is the one who works on you with on a thesis, who works with you on a thesis or dissertation. And so they can be the same, they can be different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you select the faculty, you select the major professor. Yeah, so that is your choice. When you get to the thesis or dissertation stage, you know, it's your job to kind of, you know, seek out the major professor and ask them to be your professor and start working on your dissertation.
How many students would you say, the master students do complete the portfolio versus the thesis?
So that's a new program. So we have zero data on that so far. Yeah, it's a new, yeah. What we've done before is we had either a thesis, it was called a two-paper option, which means like two shorter papers. I think ethnomusicology now has that. Are you PhD or MA? MA. Yeah, so I believe you'll have a two-paper option as well. And you can read the catalog to see what that's like. Yeah, so it's so you will tell us how many students complete that. Yeah.
So is it, I assume it may be easier to become a grader rather than a TA, but you say you can stack them, but in the instance where it's like, oh, I really want to be a TA, and you don't get that, you can still work as a grader.
You may still work as a grader. I would say that it's unusual for us not to offer a TA or TF position to our incoming students. You know, again, we're a big school and we have a lot of courses to cover. And so, you know, we try to, you know, and obviously we want to take care of you all. And so I think nearly all of the time we've offered TA or TF positions to the students who come here. And, you know, things, you know, there could be unexpected events, but, you know, you'll get the information in March. But I think nearly all of our students get TA or TF positions. And if you're a master's student, your first year will be a TA position. And in theory, at least, you'll have an opportunity to, in some cases, if there are teaching needs, to audition for a TF position if you want to get experience as an oral skills instructor. And actually, several of our master's students this year have done that. And that makes sense to me, just because your first year, there's still a lot to learn, and so we don't want to overload your schedule. But you know, if they want to get teaching experience conducting the actual class later, you know, that'll give them the opportunity. So that makes sense.
In the same line of questioning, this may be a long list to answer. You don't have to, considering we're from different backgrounds. But could you give us an idea of some of the classes that we might be assisting with? if we had either of those positions?
Yeah, I can give you an exact list if, I won't do it now because it would take too long to dig up the spreadsheet. Let's see. Theory, typically the courses you'll be assisting with are, the core theory courses. So that's, theory 1, 2, 3, and 4. With musicology, we have, several kind of large enrollment undergraduate courses, that require TFs. Many of those are taught or overseen by IPRO Prince. So those include music as communication, sounds and cinema. Let's see,
History of rock.
history of rock. Yes, thank you. History of rock. And then there are also just history survey courses like, music pre-1750, music post-1750. And so a lot of these will have a teaching assistant to help out with the course. They'll do some grading and some assistance. Some of these courses also fulfill the core requirements for the University of North Texas. And so they'll have both music majors and then also some non-music majors taking the course, which is actually quite interesting because those students will bring a different perspective. So those are the courses in the musicology area. And the ethnomusicology, some of the courses we've had TAs and TFs for include global pop and African American music. And then we also have 2 TF positions to run the mariachi aguilas, and the Chinese music ensemble. And Kathy Ragland, our area coordinator for ethnomusicology, is here. Kathy can tell us if I forgot anything. Yeah, but those are the sorts of courses. And typically very often the ethnomusicology students will be TAs for both the musicology and ethno courses, just because there are a lot of musicology courses to cover. We've occasionally had theory students be TAs for the musicology courses, just depending on need, and I think that's great. It's just a good experience, by the way.
Historically, we're in need of more TAs.
Yeah.
There is a question about PhD.
Oh, thank you. And Kathy is saying you'll learn about the TA courses today at 1 p.m. Do PhD candidates cover their own tuition? So, thank you, Antara. So, let me close this for a second. So, to figure out costs, I go back here. And so this is this is the salary you would get as a UNT student here, and each of these positions also contains a tuition benefit program. Basically, you'll get kind of either 3, well, if you're a PhD student, you'll get 6 or more credits just given to you so that you have to register without paying the costs, without paying most of the costs associated with those courses. So that's kind of how you could fund your tuition. And then we also, and then we also have these scholarships to help you fund your tuition. So that's how the funding works. Does that answer your question, Antara? Oh, hopefully so. Yes.
How many credits is standard per semester?
Typically 9. Yeah, there are some students who take 12. That's a lot, but 9 is standard. So that's 3 courses. And again, that'll depend. Like occasionally you might have to kind of take an extra, review course, or there might be some course you really want to take. So if you want to go up to 12, you can.
It's a desperation.
Desperation, yeah. Honestly, I would recommend 9 unless you have a really compelling reason, just because like with most of these courses, you need that time to really absorb the material and I guess.
Sorry, our courses here typically 2 or 3 credits.
3. Yeah.
And then for the language requirement, is that just for PhD or master's as well?
Masters have a language requirement as well. In the theory at least, the master's requires 1 language, and the PhD requires 2. We currently updated to allow a research tool like computer programming to substitute for 1 language. That's I'll go ahead and show my cards. I really push for that. And then for the other areas, I just read the course catalog and figure that out.
Is the same. It's
1 and 2, yeah. And ethno, I'm not sure if it might be just 1.
We still have, for the PhD, we still have German as mandatory, but it can be substituted.
So, depending on your research interests. Yeah. Like we had 1 theory student who looked at Spanish keyboard music, in the 18th century. And so obviously Spanish was obviously one of his languages.
When we get done.
Yeah, well, these are good questions, and I want to make sure that if you just think of something, I don't want to cut you off. So I'll be around here. In fact, I'll be staying here because I'll be doing the theory mock seminar at 10 o'clock. So if you're a theory student, please stick around. If you're not a theory student and want to check it out, you are most welcome to. What else? So there's water here. Very importantly, the bathroom is go this way and turn right, and the bathroom's down the hall because you want to know where these are as well. Oh, so the TBB is the TBB is per semester, just to make sure that's clear. Yeah. So you'll get the TBB in the spring as well.
Can you mute it for a second?
Muted? Well, this is muted. Let me mute the microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
based on the purse instead of breathe. So that brings the basic differences between when we are thinking about the rhythmic or meter things. Yeah, so that was a big point for me.
Yes, the pulse as opposed to the breath.
Yes.
Yes, and I don't know a whole lot about creating music, but there are different styles, right? So there's like the drumming style that's very rhythmically active. Yeah, and then there are other styles where basically each phrase is created by just one long breath and so it moves very slowly, right? Yeah, and I used to remember the names of those styles, but I can't remember them anymore. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, all right. Well, it's fascinating. All right. Any other comments?
I really appreciate the difference in perspectives from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
It was incorporated into like the general overarching part of the research efforts.
Thank you. Yeah, good. So I'm glad you like this reading. And, you know, this Piper reading, he's not the only person who's talked about groove and talked about other scholars, but I found his writing just very sensitive and very kind of, and very respectful of the other scholars he's talking about. Like he kind of summarizes his ideas well and in a respectful way. And then he kind of just gives just interesting discussion of the music he wants to talk about. So I found it a very readable and engaging discussion. Okay, so I think we've kind of talked about this already, but let's see if we can define groove. And one thing that Piper does is he sort of starts from ordinary language. You know, so we might say, I like this song's groove. I'm into this song's groove. The drummer played an R&B groove and play it this way to make it more laid back groove. You know, those are all sentences that, you know, a listener or a musician might say. They all contain the word groove, but I would say that the word groove means something slightly different in each one. So like, what are some of the meanings of groove? We kind of halfway answered this question already that might kind of correspond to these sentences.
Well, just to sort of restate, but maybe even more concise, I guess to me and from the reading, I would say it is something that repeats, but, and then the next part, it's not, you don't have to, but often has some form of variation a little bit.
Yeah, so that's like being into the groove, right? And so it's this sense of repetition with variation that creates an orientation toward the present moment, right? And I think you mentioned like Leonard Meyer. And Leonard Meyer had a whole theory of emotion and meaning in music. And sort of one of the key components of Leonard Meyer's theory is that what creates emotion is expectation. And so what creates emotion is basically our expectation of future events and then hearing how those are, you know, fulfilled or thwarted or, you know, delayed and then fulfilled later on. So for Leonard Meyer, emotion was created by basically an orientation toward what's going to happen in the future and how is that going to be fulfilled. And you know, that's a big part of music, no question at all. Okay, but then I think this idea of groove was created as kind of like a counterbalance to that, saying that there's also emotion that comes from just being oriented not toward the future, but toward like where we are right now, or the present moment. And so for the writers that Piper is referencing, groove is about basically like just being a way of being oriented just to the present moment and finding kind of interest in just I guess like the repetition with variation that is that's taking place before us. And how that's created, we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. Okay. And then I like the song's groove. Like there, you know, groove is pleasurable. Like groove is something we like. Okay. I think he talks about the stream metaphors. It's not like a waterfall. It's not, you know, it's not a storm. It's a stream. It's kind of, it's easy to get, it's pleasurable to kind of be in, you know, kind of participating in a song's groove. And so, you know, a groove is a pleasurable desire to move in a periodic manner. Dance, you know, just and this pleasure comes from, you know, the music sounding rhythms. Okay. And then I think this is getting to what you were talking about, Garrett. You know, groove is like a sensation of being oriented toward the present moment. And I think part of that comes from this repetition with variation. Yeah. There's one thing I would add, which is sometimes there's a sense of gradual growing energy or intensity in a groove-based song. It's not something that Piper talked about, but it's something that other people have talked about, like pressing and more recently, Braxton Shelley talking about gospel, like the ending vamps in a gospel, create the sense of like increasingly heightened climactic energy with each new section, with a groove at the same time. Does that make sense? Okay. So a sense of being oriented toward the present moment, or even somehow like fused with the rhythms if you want to be a little more metaphysical about that. Okay. We can also say the drummer played an R&B groove. And so what does that mean? Like you might say to a drummer, hey, play an R&B groove for me.
I would say just like a set rhythm of expectation for that style.
Yeah, exactly. So a groove can also be, you know, a set of rhythmic figures that's associated with a particular style. Okay, so it could be a particular style. And then play it this way to create a more laid back groove. So I thought, I thought this was interesting because, you know, you might say that, and here, you know, two types of grooves could be both pleasurable, you know, we both like them, they both have repetition, but, you know, one might be laid back and one might not be. And I guess the idea there is, sorry, let's try it again. Groove is also like just the particular affect suggested by the bodily emotions, you know, that a track creates. And so, you know, I'd have like, you know, an upbeat R&B song, and that creates like this joyful, bouncy feeling, and then doom-metal obviously creates something very different. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, there's motion, but it's a much different kind of motion with a much different kind of affect associated. Yeah.
But to add on to that a little bit, that last quote makes me think of also the term that you hear a lot, like being in the pocket.
Yes.
And so I think having the right, well, and we'll also talk about tempo in a little bit, I'm sure, but often tempo has a big effect to the groove. You know, if you're playing a song with a band or with an ensemble, if it feels off, someone might say, you know, the groove isn't right, we're rushing or we're dragging. So it's something you kind of have to find and lock into.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so that gets into issues of, well, I mean, certainly one thing that creates a groove is just coordination among the parts, you know, and a clear explicit beat, absolutely. And then for a particular style, there are these small variations in micro timing that will just help to create a specific feel and that are associated with a specific style. And, you know, being in the pocket, sometimes that's basically when you have the snare, like if you're a rock drummer, your snare beat is just slightly late. That's sort of, yeah, that's kind of what's called pocket drumming sometimes. And it has a different feeling. It's just more relaxed somehow. And actually, if you read Matthew Butterfield, he kind of has a whole theory of why that's the case. I had a friend who's played a lot of, you know, drum sessions and he's really attuned to that. So like I was talking about drumming, and I like Max Weinberg. He says, no, Max Weinberg, he's not good. You know, his snare drums are too early. It needs to be a little bit later. It's like he was really precise about that, and he was very precise about where that snare should be placed. Okay. All right, so what creates groove? You know, again, so first of all, this does not encompass every single sense of the term groove. And you know, so I'm not saying that this encompasses everything. And also, like, musicians and practitioners will use these words in different ways. And you know, we're not trying to, you know, colonize their discourse, as Piper says. We're not trying to kind of impose our own definition. We're just trying to try to get a sense of what some of these definitions are, and seeing if we can use the tools of music theory to just, you know, be a little more precise about, you know, what might be creating these effects that people are noticing. Oh, sorry, let's go forward. Okay, so these are some things that Anne Danielson and Guillermo Schmidt-Kammerer talk about. So Anne Danielson, you know, is a scholar of you know, soul and James Brown and some more recent R&B and soul styles, and she talks quite a bit about kind of what creates groove. In her chapter from the Oxford Handbook in Critical Concepts, these are the things that she talks about. Okay, and this is a lot, but we'll listen to an example, and hopefully that will make it a little more clear. Okay, so one is just a regular explicit tactus. Okay, or at least some cyclically repeating rhythmic pattern. Okay, so there has to be a beat, it has to be repeating, and it has to be explicit, which means there has to be like a, you know, a boom, or some sort of drum sound. And they've actually done, you know, listener experiments where they kind of said, like, which one of these is more danceable? And you know, one of the main these are Western listeners, you know, Western listeners, I should say. One of the main variables that increase the danceability is just how loud the drums are. You know, so sometimes it really is, you know, simple. So that's one part. Very often the beat is subdivided. You don't just have, you know, you also have and so forth. Okay, and that's gonna be my next big hit. I can retire now. Okay, so those are some of the basic ingredients. Okay, and then another feature of groove is this is my term, perceptual complexity. This is something that Jeff Pressing talks about as well. Very often there's some sort of rhythmic perceptual complexity that can kind of increase the grooviness of a particular track. And again, this is well, this is something that not everyone may agree with. Some people might say it's just about the beat. That's all it really is. And the perceptual complexity, that's just related to style. It's something else, maybe. But like a lot of people say, it seems like in a lot of these styles, at least, perceptual complexity seems to be an element that's often present. Okay, so that could be basically through syncopation, basically through some pattern that's creating a counter-rhythmic figure. In other words, that creates a tension between a tension between the strong beats and then these other events that pull against the beat. Okay, and that's that Piper talked about it as well when he's talking about Kyle. For Kyle, the sense of forward motion and present orientation is created by the regular metrical structure and the events that push against it. And so part of that is through counter rhythmic figures. Another way is having basically layers of repetition that are non-commensurate with the primary beats, like a group of 3 against a quadruple meter, something like that. Okay. And then Maria Wittek actually points out that very often in groove, and in some ways, this kind of just naturally falls out of the counter rhythmic figures and syncopation. A common feature of groove is to leave some strong events unsounded in at least some instruments. Okay, I'll say that again. Very often kind of leaving some strong metrical events unsounded in at least some instruments. And that the way she talks about it is basically those gaps create like opportunities or invitations for the listener to fill them in through, dancing, through bodily motion. Okay. If you study African drumming, a lot of North African drumming styles do the same thing, like the basic pattern, if you know the basic bell pattern in African drumming, that is basically designed. It's mathematically designed to, no matter how you rotate that, there are going to be some strong beats that are unsounded. And so, that's just kind of it has to be, those gaps kind of have to be there. And so it's basically designed to encourage that listener participation. Okay. And then finally, another feature that people often talk about is microrhythmic deviations from a perceived metrical structure. So in other words, that's what Kyle was talking about when we see them, like there might be events that are like slightly ahead of the beat, slightly behind the beat, and so forth. And this also has to do with things like swing, where you have when the beat is not subdivided evenly, but the first subdivision is a little bit longer than the second. So not like but okay. And swing is not triplets, just to be clear. There can be several different layers of swing. Okay. And in Korean style, I don't know, like uneven divisions are definitely like a feature of the style. But again, this can be realized in several different ways around the world as well. Okay, and then what you were talking about, like the small variations in basic figures, is certainly a way of maintaining interest as well. Okay, so let's hear kind of a locus classicus example of groove. I like Smokey Robinson, so let's listen to "Going to a Go-Go." This is a great song, so you're welcome in advance. Let's hear it, and then we'll talk about kind of how this creates groove. Sorry, we'll stop there. Okay, so this is a very bass heavy speaker. Sorry about that. All right, so here are some of the things that create groove. Okay. So the first has to do with the great guitar line. I should have looked this up. I don't know if it's Mark Cartland playing that, probably, because he was such a close collaborator with Robinson. So we have this. I'll do my best to play this. It won't be the exact same because I'm not Marv Tarplin, who a few people are. So we have, let's see. So bum bum da 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 bum 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 ba da 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 da. Okay. So notice that at the beginning we have dum dum da 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 da. When you look at the chords, bum bum ba da 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 da, those chords repeat every 3/8 notes. Okay. So against this regular 4/4 pulse, it's creating this counter rhythmic figure. Okay. That's element number 1. Later on, you might have noticed that there's another guitar going, just playing the offbeats, one of the other session guitarists. Okay. In addition, if you listen to the guitar part, the division is not exact. Okay. So it's not da 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 da. Sometimes that first note is a little bit longer. So there's a little bit of sense of like swing and micro-rhythmic variation in how the guitar is playing that figure. So it's like dum dum da 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 da. It's a little swung. There's a drum hit, obviously. Okay. So you have dun, 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 dun. You have a combination of on beats and off beat syncopation. And then also if you look at the drum part and the bass line. Dum, da, 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 dum, ba, da, 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 dum, ba, da, da, dum, ba, da, 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 da. That's leaving gaps on some, on not all, but some of those drum beats. They again just create these gaps in the texture to create rhythmic interest and to invite the listener to stomp their feet, dance, whatever, go to the go-go. Okay. Butterfield talks about in the pocket drumming. He also talks about sort of these small scale anacoustics as an element of groove. In other words, an anacoustics is just something that that creates that kind of heightens our expectation for a following event. That's what an anacoustics is, right? And he talks about like these very small scale anacoustics, like dum, right, dum, as a way of kind of generating groove, because it's basically just kind of orienting our attention to each new beat again and again and again, like just really small at a really small scale. And you can see that do-dum with that bass line there, that's creating a small scale anacoustics. He talks about that in relation to micro timing, like swing and pocket drumming as well. It's very interesting. It's speculative, but quite interesting. Okay, oh, sorry. All right. So, this is kind of like a very clear example of groove. It has all these elements of syncopation, of gaps on strong beats, of counter-rhythmic figures that are helping to just generate this complex rhythmic texture that, does the things that we associate with groove. It creates a feeling of orientation to the present moment. It makes us want to participate bodily, all those things. Okay. And then here's The Psychopath by St. Vitus. So here, Piper says, aha, look, Doom does the same thing. Doom does the same thing. This kind of does similar things with groove as, these classical R&B songs do. So let me, I think I have this one. And it goes on for like another 7 minutes. Okay, so yeah, it is a Doom song after all. It's been a while maybe since you've read this article, but what does he say about this rhythmic texture that he argues is, creates not the same effect obviously, but it's a different type of bodily motion. But what does this do? It creates a sense of groove or a groove type of style in a similar way to going to a go-go. Yes.
One thing you mentioned was like opposite rhythmic values for
Yeah.
guitar and drums. So in this example, you have like faster or smaller rhythmic values for the drums, and then the guitar is a little bit longer, which creates that dichotomy and like you wanting to anticipate almost a little bit what the guitar is going to do.
Yes.
And then the drum
yes.
feeds that anticipation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's kind of this tension between slower and faster rhythmic values. Absolutely. Yeah. And that creates this sense of anticipation because we're like waiting for the next event. Absolutely. And that's something that's kind of unique to Doom, and we'll talk about more maybe if there's time. Sure. Sanha?
Almost same, but like between the gap, it makes the regular written patterns and versus the irregular rhythmic patterns at the same time, and that two things at the same time makes the groove.
Yes.
Bit of the rhythm.
Yeah, so there's just, again, this tension between a regular pattern and then some events that are off. So here, like the snare drum especially. Exactly. And then there's some micro timing as well, right? So the snare is not always right on the beat. It's sometimes a little bit late. It's more like, oh, sorry. I got it wrong. It's hard to do, but like the snare is sometimes a little late. And again, that creates a sense of this tension between rhythmic regularity and the events that are just off it. Yeah.
And just to add on to what all of you have been saying, I also like that this is the part where Piper starts to say that this is when, due to all of these rhythms that are sort of leading us in anticipation, it demands that your body like starts to anticipate it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like we're anticipating it. And so it's like, come on, what's going to happen? And that makes us go like this, And I saw you going like this, like you were nodding along. And so, you were, as far as I'm concerned, you were dancing along to this music. You weren't like, go-go dancing, you were headbanging, but it's just a different kind of dancing that has its own, bodily associations. Absolutely. Okay, yeah, he's arguing that this does many of the same things that other groove-based styles do. Just to be clear, it also creates like this orientation to the present moment, because this repeats again and again, and we're not really thinking about what the next section is. We're just we're concerned about where we are right now. Oh, I'm a theorist, so I would be remiss if I did not point out that there's a flat missing from that beat. He made a mistake. Flat. Maybe he forgot the key signature. All right. Okay. So doom metal does kind of creates groove in many similar ways as other groove-based styles. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then groove metal also can create groove in unexpected ways, in kind of ways that I think that have not been talked about as much. And one way that it does that is by changing tempos. Okay. And so this is kind of getting into new area. When people talk about groove, there has been research to kind of try to identify sort of these elements of groove and unexpected musical features and musical parameters. In my seminar last year, we read Mitchell O'Reiner. He talks about groove in like a single rapping voice. So that's not really a whole rhythmic texture, it's just a single voice. But he's saying like sometimes this voice creates these groovy repeated rhythmic patterns through its like rhymes and accents. And he associates that with groove. And if you read on Tara Boyle, she talked about groove and the jazz pianist Craig Taborn. And there you have like very often like a single pulse layer that's pretty constant and regular. But then you have these irregular groupings. But basically, like there's enough of a regularity in the irregular groupings that we have this orientation for the present moment, despite the irregularities. Okay? And she also associates that with groove. And then Braxton Shelley talks about groove in gospel music, but he says groove can also kind of increase in intensity. So there can be a sense of direction, a large scale direction and groove, even while there's an orientation for the present moment in the same time. The example he gives is like the code, like the codas, or like the final sections of these gospel songs. And it's very interesting stuff. Okay. Typically there's an assumption of a constant tempo and groove. Okay. But we listen to some songs that clearly do not have a steady or constant tempo. So, I'm curious to know what you think. Like, is there a bodily motion implied in these songs or not? And if so, like, how does the changing tempo affect that? So let's start with Three Sisters, because this might be a little more straightforward. And I have a transcription for that. Okay. I'll play basically a couple seconds before the sung verse, and then the sung verse, and then a little bit after that. So it's not the entire passage you listen to, but just to refresh our memory. Oops, sorry. Oh, and so forth. Yeah, that's all I have. That is the end of the excerpt. Okay. So if you look underneath the staff, there are some numbers. That's basically the duration of the word in seconds. Okay, so 1.43, 1.113, 1.044. If you want, I can show you how I came up with those numbers. Yeah, it's so I use Sonic Visualizer. This is a spectrograph of the song. Actually, in this case, these thick lines, the thick solid line is basically noise, so that's a drum hit. So with most of this, you can align the events with the drum hits pretty easily. and I create a time instance in Sonic Visualizer, and then just exported the audio data and, you know, did some math and determine the beat. So I'll show you what it sounds like with just a little bit, and then I'll show you what happened after I added these beat tracking. Well, this is manually done beat tracking. So here's the spectrogram. Okay, and now I add my analysis. And so on. Okay. All right. So, you know, it's not a steady tempo, really. In fact, look at my graph. Give me a second. Let me see if I can pull it up. Give me just 1 second. Attendance. No. Oh, sorry. I think I know this. Yeah, here we go. Okay. This is just a graph of the length of each of those beats. So the solid blue ones are the, you know, odd numbered beats. The checkered red ones are the even numbered beats. Okay. I had a student who was colorblind last year, and so I was trying to make sure they have different ways of seeing just for accessibility. Yeah, so first things first, do you notice anything about the duration of these beats? And then how does this relate to how we just, you know, interact, how we feel the groove and how, you know, headband? Because I saw you all, you know, even with mirror, you know, even with those like delayed beats and switch up beats, like, yeah, you know, it's, you are kind of grooving along to it, you know. So I guess the question is why, you know, or maybe a better question is, how does the changing duration of the beats influence how you interact bodily with the music? Yes,
Actually, we are expecting the beat, especially the down beat, gonna be really steady. Especially when we are doing some Western art performance major.
Yeah.
But in here, like this kind of doom metal music, the delay tempo, delay beat, especially on the downbeat, that I think paradoxically that really lead us to go to the front, even though it's delaying the tempo at the drawback. So I think that the gap between the expectation and the delay and the power that we want to go to the front, it's all conflicted, but it comes from here actually.
Yes.
I felt that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. So like there's a sense of, in a way, kind of delaying heightens our expectation because we think, come on, when it's going to come? And then they make it, and the longer we wait, within reason, the longer we wait, the more expectation increases. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to build off that, part of what creates such that different expectation is the variety of those weak beats. Like
Yes.
you see, there's the most variety of like shortness and length in those weak beats, and I think that's what really drives us to want to go to the strong beat more, is because that weak beat is so inconsistent. We want something a little bit more steady and regular, and even though the strong beat isn't regular, you know, we're more tuned to naturally grab onto it because there's less variation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think like this, again, this tension between regularity and irregular. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're right, the strong beats tend to be, I mean, it's all irregular, but the strong beats tend to be more regular. And the weak beats are the ones that tend to be stretched out. Yeah, and I think at the end, they kind of accelerate at the end as they're getting to the end of the section. So, you know, everything is shorter at the end when there's some when they're going to fill. But yeah, otherwise, there's this, it's creating, heightening that expectation.
Yeah, so we've spoken a lot about anticipation, of course, and something that I've found in this piece and the Bismarck one is that it seems to be subversion of the anticipation, like doing the opposite of what you're anticipating sometimes is what happens. And I think Piper discussed how important the drums are often. It feels like the drums are really always in charge almost. Example, right before this first measure of where the vocals come in, there's a big drum fill, and when I first heard it, to me it feels like they're about to increase the tempo, but then they do the opposite and slow down.
And they pull back again.
And then, like we were saying, on the second system, if you look at the vocal line, I mean, all of those ties, there's just nothing landing on the downbeat. It's always like dragging over.
Yeah.
And so it feels like the only thing that we could really cling to is that drum beat, but then that's where it's also uneven. So
Yeah.
the whole thing is sort of uncertain, but I think that's kind of what gives it so much interest and anticipation. You're trying to figure it out, but there isn't an exact answer or solution, I guess.
Right, right, yeah, so it's again, like the perceptual complexity, that's not quite clear. Yeah, about the syncopation, part of that too is, I mean, this is often in metal, you know, that if the guitar is playing like on the beat, very often the vocals will be off the beat, just because the guitar is so loud and distorted, you don't want it to mask the vocalist too, but yeah, it's certainly, that's another layer of syncopation in the song, for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, another thing I wanted to say, it made me want to listen to it more so that I knew exactly what was happening. Because
Yes.
I couldn't nod my head every single time. I was like, wait, I want to go back, hold on, rewind.
Yeah.
I can get it, start and understand it. And I think maybe that's part of like the interest and the drive to be, you know, more involved in metal music. It's like, okay, I want to listen to that again. That was cool, let me figure it out. Even
Yes.
though we're not conscious of it, you know,
Yeah.
that we're trying to puzzle it together.
Mhm.
Which that was interesting.
Yeah. Sarah?
I will say, it's not really, it's like kind of climbing to the like anticipation based on like the unevenness of the beats, but I think the slower part, the after effect of the, like when you hit the bang or something like that, you go down, you also have the up motion that I think makes it like a continuous physical loop.
Yeah.
And I think with a pattern like this that's slightly off, I think part of what makes that anticipation, even when it's not an even beat, comes from this like the sort of release of like the downbeat feel.
Yes,
I
yes.
think that release really contributes to like, even if it comes late, it's still, you have that like physical feeling of like coming down. I think that's-
Yeah, yeah, but also it kind of, it encourages a specific kind of physical response, right? It's not like this, it's not like this, you have to do these big, large motions because otherwise it's just too hard to coordinate. So it encourages like these big, heavy motions. And so that kind of gets to groove. It's like what particular affect or bodily state is being suggested by these rhythms, for sure. Yeah, great. Justin?
May I just add,
Dr.
just for
Lasso.
general, are we saying that groove is a more or less permanent kind of entrainment against which we can have complexity and syncopation and stuff, or does the syncopation get subsumed within groove? It's the counterpoint, it's the rhythmic play against what the expectation of regularity, that is what the groove is.
I would certainly say that the syncopation is important. You know, it's hard to always say definitively when one thing is true of everything because it can't be. But for example, with the Smokey Robinson example that we heard, I don't think the groove would be the same or as effective if there weren't those syncopations, even just in the drums where every second measure we don't get that strong downbeat. That has a profound influence, I think. So.
It's a great answer. What like listening to the PCA, but thinking about the hyper reading. Like, if I can summarize the question, is like the syncopation, is that something against, is that something like that's kind of on top of or against the groove? Or is it like an integral part of the groove?
You know, or is groove require that integration of the syncopations, the rhythmic dissonance, you know, displacement and grouping dissonances, tempo fluctuation? Are those things happening against the groove, or is it the interplay that is the groove? Is it subsumed with it?
Yeah.
I think it often makes a group more compelling to have those syncopations and breakings of expectations, at least initially. Because I mean, even, you know, there are some pop songs where you just have downbeats and you can still like, you know, follow along to it. You're like, okay, some people might say it's a groove because it's a repetition of pattern, but something that draws our mind more to it is that there are different layers to it.
Yeah, I would say the latter, but you know, we should. I'm a theorist, and we tend to like complexity, and so we have to be careful.
It shows our own value system.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, we have a little bit of time left. Sorry. Let's talk about the Bismarck for a second, the Sear. Okay. So here, you can do that. So, this one has, has just more varied sections and so forth. So formally, it's a little more, involved. But this one I found interesting just because of the really clear tempo changes. And I thought they kind of interacted in interesting ways with the sense of climax. So both rock songs and other styles too, like gospel, they often have like this climax, we have, progressive sections that are somehow, where each one is somehow higher or more intense or more elaborate than the previous one, okay? And here I thought it was interesting that I would argue, you don't have to agree, I'd argue that they're engaging with a sense of climax with tempo change at the same time, okay? And you can see whether or not you agree. So you have like a verse going to a more climactic chorus, arguably, but the chorus is slower, which is really interesting. Or is it slower? I guess that's my question. Like, which is slower and faster? Anyway, let's hear it. So, you did it, make the not a good thing before. Ah, sorry. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. And we'll pause there for a second. Okay. So, how did the change in tempo interface with or interact with how you move that music? So I noticed you're moving more in the chorus, even though it was slower, which is interesting. And it could just because the drum number a little bit heavy. Yeah, what other
I would say in terms of like the movement, when you have a little bit quicker, sooner, you have to do like smaller, easier movements, because it doesn't take up as much time and something that's more drawn out. It's like physically you have to slow down your body in order to keep up with like the times.
Yeah, so again, like a different kind of motion. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
I feel like before we go into the chorus part, the drum kicks are really regular in, especially in eighth notes. But I feel like just entering to the chorus and it slowly changes to the half note, and we can hear any notes in the outbeat. I think that's gonna be a really big change for us to feel about the rhythm, and we are expecting the regular beat, which is on the eighth notes regularly, but now it's gone, and it makes me feel like it's a little bit paused at that point. Paused at that point. Yeah, so as Piper mentioned, like there was a short halftime was there, I would say. So that makes me feel about throwing to the, okay, this is the climax part, even though it's really slower than the beginning part.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the Three Sisters, right? Where like there's a violation of expectation that makes us pay attention. Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing, if I can, thank you for that observation, Sam. There's one thing I might add, if you'll allow me to. which has to do with this tension between slower and faster layers of tempo. So just something to think about. So here is the riff in the verse. Doesn't sound good, but you get the idea. Okay, it's 8 seconds long. Here is the riff in the chorus. Sorry. It's 5.056 seconds long. So you have a faster tempo with a longer riff in the verse, and then the repetitions of the riff are actually shorter in the verse, which is kind of interesting. And so there's this tension between a slower tempo but faster repetitions of this repeated rhythm. Not only that, but if you look at the end of the chorus, you have these boom, 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 boom. You actually have the bass drum on every single chord of the beat, and that's actually the fastest time the bass drum plays in the entire song. So like the time between bass drum plays is the fastest in the chorus, even though the tempo is slower. And so there's this interesting just tension between some layers that are faster and some layers that are slower. That kind of just, again, just create this complexity that makes it a little more interesting than just, we're slowing down. Oh, we can do that. We can do that. Okay. Speaking of, did you hear the end? What happens at the end? There's an even greater tension between fast and slow at the end of the song. So there's actually a final brief retard, not a dramatic one, but another brief retard near the end of the song. And then basically the chords are basically sitting in a single chord. But then what do the drums do? Let's hear. 420. So the drums are actually playing their fastest. Car, ending. Here it is. No, not here. Sorry. There we go. So again, like this tension between fast and slow, where we slow down even a little bit more. It's slight in this case, but we have a very fast drum roll, and so forth. 6 tuplets or 12 tuplets, whatever it is. Okay, good. Well, thank you all for exploring these issues with me. This is a new research topic, and I find it quite fascinating. But I hope you all enjoyed it. We have 3 minutes left for concluding thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the article, but I also appreciate that at the end there was some discussion about how the best way to say it is, I guess, just across all of our Western scope of music, a lot of times we encounter people insinuating that some types of music are better or more valuable, and it was the same thing with types of dance or movement. And so I appreciate that the author, after making their argument for why there is groove in this type of music, they also went further to say, and the dancing and movement associated with it is just as valuable or valid as other types, even if it's not necessarily always viewed that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like there's a lot of scholarship on the history of headbanging. Stephen Hudson has written some scholarship where he suggests that, like, if you look at actually R&B performers or like early rock performers like Chuck Berry, they do very similar motions. So these could come from a common source. These could all come from a common source. Yeah, but certainly it expands my idea of what dancing is, certainly, which I like. So. Yes, Gordon?
I appreciate that this relates on rhythmic ideas, but what about melodic content for group? Like, does that ever play a role in creating expectations?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I guess, typically you're talking about rhythmic layers. So like the melodic content could create a rhythmic layer. So like in Tara Boyle's article, she'll often like look at like a single piano part, and it might be a single line, or like there might be like a high note here and there that's creating these other rhythmic patterns. But that's really relating melody to rhythm, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know, if you have like further ideas, I'd love to hear them.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, maybe that could be your paper or something. That could become your dissertation.
Thought the same thing because, okay, to be honest, I've never heard of a manner museum in my life ever. So it was my very first time to hear that kind of things. So I feel like there's not really clear melody or like climax that we are always expected to. So because of that things, and there's not much harmony of the thing. So that things made us to think about more about the rhythm parts. And because of that things, rhythm has more tendency to going somewhere instead of the melody or the harmonies. So that was my thinking.
Okay, yeah, that's true, although, and I think one thing that distinguishes doom metal from other styles is there are styles that are very melodic, actually. It's slow, but there is melody, like the Three Sisters. That's a melody, or at least, you maybe don't like it, but you're allowed to have whatever feelings you want about the melody, but, yeah, I mean, there is a melody in some of the songs. Yeah, so I think the relationship between melody, that's something that happens.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to think of like something that came to mind was like a partitures. So those can maybe be rhythmic, but how do they create, maybe like that offset, like leading away from the.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's maybe more of a performance discussion or
Sure.
if it's like, and how the group is constructed.
Yeah, well, also like anticipation is a melodic event too, but that relates to like rhythmic expectation, But no, that's got a little, melodic event. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm kind of weirdly interested in looking at electronically generated music in terms of like its like in comparison with this whole idea of groove. With beats that are like exactly in time.
Yeah.
Not played by a live person who's going to have discrepancies in
Right.
tempo and rhythm. I'm just interested to see like what the difference is in terms of people's response. Like if you think of like electronic dance music, like all of that is going to be like pretty metrically correct. So it would be interesting to see like what kind of things you can associate with like the effectiveness of a groove when it doesn't have like these natural offbeat tendencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so there have been studies about that. So like, Charles Kyo's arguing that, there have to be these discrepancies for groove to be present. And like for him, that was like an essential ingredient in groove. And I think that's really been disproven by studies where they play like these exact amount of, the synthesizer again, drum back or something. And people found them plenty dancing. And so you can dance to something that's rigidly metronomic. And it can have groove. And actually later on, Charles Kyle admitted, I think I was wrong about that, so it's not kind of this kind of micro timing deviation is not necessary for groove. So it doesn't relate necessarily to danceability. But it could be like, some other thing that that's part of like the feeling of the track. And like for me, like, especially with some of these styles, like if they were metronomic, it wouldn't be the same song.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, so it could be like, it just influences the kind of dance we do or like the feeling or just like the general texture. But not the danceability per se. Like that could be, yeah, but it's a very interesting topic, especially when you get to like these edge cases, like the songs we're talking about, where it seems like this is so important when we interact with it. Yeah, so yeah, it'd be interesting to compare like the a strictly metronomic performance. Absolutely. All right. Well, I don't have a big grand conclusion, but actually I think you all did a great job giving your concluding thoughts a lot better than. Right. And what's on the schedule? So our next event is the library tour next? I believe so. Let me walk you all down there, okay? That'll be simplest. Because you are meeting at oh, it's PowerPoint, that's why. Yeah, library tour. Okay, let me just